Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, October 14th. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to everyone that is celebrating. Happy Christopher Columbus Day, whichever one you are celebrating today. I hope you guys had a great weekend, are having a great day, and it was a wild weekend in sports, and we are here to break down all of it. The AL and NLCS are underway. We will talk about those later on in the show. Of course, we'll get to winners and losers of both college football and the NFL. Predict Monday Night Football. There is a massive game for supremacy in the AL East tonight. We'll talk about that and touch on the WNBA finals just a little bit at the end. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, October 14th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our first topic today, that being the winners and losers from an NFL Week 6 that got kind of out of hand. It wasn't one of those weeks where we saw lots of games go down to the wire, but we got a lot of statement games, a lot of statement wins out of some of these teams. So we're going to start off, as always, we have 5 winners, 5 losers. We're going to start off in the winners category here. And this one might come a little bit out of left field. A team that lost, a team that in general did not look very good, other than one part. The New York Giants defense is my number 5 winner of the week. Their defense has been incredible all season, especially on the front four. You take a look at what they have down there, even after losing Kayvon Thibodeau, who's an electric pass rusher down there. Brian Burns stepped up huge in a role that they desperately needed him to. Dexter Lawrence continues to be one of the best defensive tackles in all of the NFL. That is a defensive line, even though they were down Kayvon Thibodeau. They had Azeez Ojulari that was able to step in, played an awesome game himself. If I were to tell you they were leading the league in sacks, that's a kind of stat that you wouldn't believe me. This Giants defense is awesome. On the back end, Jason Pinnock's playing really good at safety. Tyler Nubin, the rookie's been really good back there as well. You also have Drew Phillips, another rookie who stepped in really well, played really good football against some solid receivers that they've had to cover. I'm very impressed by that Giants defense. They're the number 5 winner this week. Getting over to the loser side real quick, the number 5 loser of the week has the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns didn't show up with anything that we didn't expect them to, right? They came in to play the Philadelphia Eagles, and they didn't show up like world beaters. They didn't play better or worse than we expected them to, but they are stuck with Deshaun Watson. And that will perpetually put them on this loser wheel, on the loser side of things, even if they win games. They ended up losing today, but that was probably one of their closest games of the season. It's probably going to be one of their closest games of the entire season this year in the NFL. The coaching staff has to stick with Deshaun Watson. They are stuck with him. They do not have another option. They owe him $45 million this year, $45 million next year, $45 million the year after that, with a $72 million dead cap hit. They are stuck with him, regardless of what Kevin Stefanski and the owners can say. They are stuck with him. They don't have another choice. They just have to ride this out for 3 more seasons. The Browns are on the loser side, not just because of this week, but because of everything that they've done leading up to this week surrounding Deshaun Watson. Getting back to the winners, number 4 is Jordan Love. He gets his second straight win. He gets a second straight win, a huge win for them, puts up 4 touchdowns. They showed a stat. He has the most touchdowns in the league. In his first couple of games, he is on an MVP pace for touchdowns. He needs to cut down his interceptions a little bit, but that Packers team is awesome. Really, and we'll get into this in a little bit, everyone in the NFC North is awesome. Jordan Love, 4 touchdowns, a huge, huge performance for Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers to dismantle the Cardinals. I know that defense isn't the most impressive, but this is the best that we've seen Jordan Love be. He's obviously coming off of that injury he sustained in week 1. Week 6 is generally when we expected him to be back healthy. He came back a little bit early, a lot earlier than I expected. And now I feel like he's fully healthy. You see that movement in the pocket, his ability to create, make plays, off-platform throws is really what makes him that special quarterback, that $55 million man. He's showing that now. It was a great game from him. He is my number 4 winner of the week. Similarly, my number 4 loser of the week, when we talked about ones that don't really make sense, the Eagles are my number 4 loser of the week. And not just the Eagles, Nick Sirianni and his situation. The Eagles are a team that on paper should be a contender. Obviously, they made the Super Bowl 2 years ago. 2 years ago, they make a Super Bowl. Last year, they collapsed down the stretch. We've seen Jalen Hurts not look the same. He's looked awful, really. Even with his full complement of weapons. You get A.J. Brown back, Devontae Smith back. You've still had Saquon Barkley, who had a down week this week against a bad Browns defense. This is a team that you need to see more out of. This is a team that you expect more out of, and they've been unable to do that. And what really, really put them on the loser side this week is their coach, Nick Sirianni. The way that their coach acted at the end of a game that they should have dominated. They squeak by a win. They squeak by a win. And when I say squeak by a win, I mean it. They win 16-20, a game that they should have dominated, a game that should never have been that close. And yet you see Nick Sirianni out there trash-talking his own fans. Like this was a fancy special win or something. This was a game you should have won. This is a game you should have dominated. Your team did not play that great of football. You can't go Kirk Cousins, you like that mode on your fans. It's not charming. It's not endearing yourself to this city. It's just not working. The Eagles are the number 4 losers this week. Number 3, back to the winner's side, the rookie quarterbacks. We had 2 rookie quarterbacks make their debut this week. We had a lot of rookie quarterbacks continue their incredible performances. Starting off with the 2 that made their debut, and we'll get more into it later on in our show, I believe. Drake May makes his debut, throws for 243 yards and 3 touchdowns. He threw a couple of interceptions. It's fine. It's his rookies. It's his first start. He, against a good Texans defense, against a good Texans secondary, has thrown for the most yards of any quarterback that has faced them. We saw Caleb Williams, when he was in his second start, go up against this same Texans defense and get absolutely destroyed back there. This was a very, very good outing for Drake May. He is part of that club, along with Spencer Rattler, who, while they both lost that game, showed a lot of promise. Spencer Rattler maybe not as much as Drake May, but putting up 27 points against a division opponent, regardless of the mistakes you made, both of these quarterbacks started off slow, but in their first starts, they both looked really good. There's a lot to like out of these rookie quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler, maybe you actually have a discussion over Derek Carr there, because that offense looked a lot better with Spencer Rattler as far as pushing the ball downfield, even with the amount of even with how shorthanded the Saints offensively were. Drake May, awesome. I'm glad they made the switch. This just keeps the locker room together, and you can tell he was the better quarterback. That team looks so much better with him at the helm. Without Jacoby Brissett there. He's already thrown for more touchdowns than Jacoby Brissett. But getting to the ones that have already started and continue to dominate, Caleb Williams has gotten better every single week. He threw 4 touchdowns in London against the Jags. Basically a home game for the Jaguars, even though in the books it was a home game for the Bears over there. That is a huge, huge win for the Bears. It really is. Caleb Williams has, like I said, every single week improved on every single performance, every single week of the season. He continues to get better, and it doesn't seem like he's come close to hit his ceiling. He's starting to use all of his weapons. Keenan Allen, with his first big game as a Bear, 2 touchdowns. Cole Kmet comes in, scores 2 touchdowns in that first half, also serves as the long snapper. That was just a great game by the Bears, great game by Caleb Williams. And the other rookie quarterback, of course, Jaden Daniels. In a duel, a battle between him and Lamar Jackson. He ends up losing, but he puts up great stats. This team, with him leading the helm in Washington, looks competent, and that in and itself is a success. The Washington team, whatever team name it's been, has not looked competent in almost 30 years. It's been a very, very long time, aside from a couple of flash-in-the-pan seasons, since the Washington Redskins Commanders football team, that team in Washington has looked competent, and under Jaden Daniels, they have done it. These rookie quarterbacks are awesome. The only one we're waiting on, Bo Nix, looked pretty good, especially in that second half. Still not my favorite. We're still waiting on J.J. McCarthy to make his debut. That'll come next season, most likely. And Michael Penix Jr., that won't come for a little while. But these rookie quarterbacks, this class has been amazing. They're my number 3 winners. Losers at number 3 are the team that Caleb Williams put those numbers on. The Jacksonville Jaguars. They look lost. They look sad. They look just not happy to be there. There seems to be some real issues in that locker room. They look demoralized, and I don't know how Doug Peterson still has a job. He said in an interview today that there needs to be some changes made with the culture. The culture needs to change by firing you, Doug Peterson. This is not just a Trevor Lawrence problem. This is a whole team problem. The defense we knew was going to be awful. They lost Tyson Chandler, one of their better cover corners, and they continue to play man. That defense does not evolve. They don't have the guys to play man coverage. They get torched in the secondary. The defensive line is solid, but it's not good enough to cover up the inadequacy of the secondary, right? This is a team that has a lot of talent, but Gabe Davis dropped 3 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence, I don't want to take all the blame off him, missed a couple of wide open touchdowns. Brian Thomas Jr. was wide open down the sideline, was underthrown. This Jaguars team as a whole is a mess, and I don't know why Doug Peterson still has a job, to be completely honest with you. They need to fire him. I don't know how he wasn't the first coach fired this season. My number 2 winners, like I alluded to earlier on in this segment, the NFC North. The NFC North are my number 2 winner. The first time in the history of football that 4 teams have 4 wins over 6 weeks in the same division. That is ridiculous. The Packers are 4-2 in last place in the division. You have an undefeated Vikings team at the top, a Lions team that just dropped 47 on the Cowboys' head, 47-9. You have a Bears team that just traveled to London. The rookie quarterback continues to get better. And of course, the Packers. We already talked about what Jordan Love did. This team, this division is absolutely dominating the football. In our power rankings last week, 3 of them were in the top 5. All of them were in the top 15. The Bears were the lowest ranked, down at 13, and they will be moving up this week. Hint, hint for tomorrow. The NFC North is something special. It's not going to last forever. They're going to start tearing each other apart. The reason the Packers are in last, because the Vikings beat them. No one else has played those division games yet, but they are going to start to come, and it is going to be a bloodbath. I cannot wait for when the NFC North starts to face off against each other. My number 2 losers, City of New York. We obviously going back a little bit and maybe even taking a small step away from football in this one. The Mets got shut out 9-0 in game 1. Game 2, they're looking a lot better. We'll get to baseball later on in the show, but getting back to football, the Giants put up 7 points at home. The Giants and Jets record at home have been awful. Awful, awful, awful. If you want to go to the true New York team, the Buffalo Bills have been really bad these last couple of weeks. Both the Jets and the Bills, and we'll get to it later on, are playing a must-win game when we talk about our Monday night preview. But the entire city of New York is filled with losers right now. The entire state of New York, New Jersey, New York, that whole area, filled with losers on the football field right now, and something needs to change quickly. My number 1 winner and my number 1 loser, they go hand in hand. I alluded to it a little bit. It's the Lions are my number 1 winner, and the Cowboys are my number 1 loser. Look, it's very simple. Detroit came into that game scathing. They came in with a fire under them that that the Cowboys were frankly not ready to deal with. We know that the Cowboys, talent-wise, have taken a step back. Their defense was already shorthanded a little bit, and then the Lions did that to them. 20 points in the second quarter. 10 points in the third quarter. They won this game in the second quarter alone. You could have just had that second quarter performance and they still would have won handily. They pulled their starters with 13 minutes to go in the game. And honestly, they could have pulled their starters with more than a whole quarter to go in this game. They were running trick plays. They wanted to get that offensive lineman touchdown so badly. The Cowboys got humiliated. They got laughed at on their owner's birthday. Jerry Jones, a very proud man. That was not the way for that to go. The Lions absolutely decimated them. They put their foot down and said no more. The Cowboys, no more. That was demoralizing. I don't know how the Cowboys, now heading into a bye week, and they needed that badly, because if they had to play a game directly after that, I cannot imagine them winning it. This bye week is going to be about healing for the Cowboys, because once you get stomped like that against a team that clearly had some emotions that you were not prepared for, that is a tough thing to come back from. It really is. Cowboys are the biggest losers, and the Lions are the biggest winners of this week. Let me know if I missed anything. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do the same thing, top 5 winners, top 5 losers for college football this weekend. Another crazy weekend, a 2-3 game, the most hyped up weekend of the whole season. We'll talk about winners and losers for that coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, October 14th. I hope everybody is having a great holiday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the winners and losers in the NFL for Week 6. In this segment, we're going to do the exact same thing, this time taking a look at Week 7 in college football. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, October 14th. But like I was saying, getting into some more winners and losers from a wild weekend in sports, a wild weekend in football. Today, this segment, we turn our attention to college football. And as always, we start off with our number 5 loser. And this one, stick with me, is a little bit of a stretch. You're going to have to listen to me on this one. The SEC is my big loser this weekend, and it's not because of anything that they did. It's not because of they're losing their grip on the sport. You look at the top of the rankings, they are consistently still at the top. Most of their contenders are still in the top 12, which is the metric we're using now to base on the playoffs, kind of, sort of, not really. The reason the SEC is a loser is because if you look back just 3-4 weeks ago, you had Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, all in the top 7. All of them in the top. You had more teams, Missouri in the top 10 as well. And now you take a look at it, and you in Texas, Texas at the top. I keep forgetting Texas is a part of the SEC. Slips my mind. Texas, as far as continuing their spot in the top, you just have Texas left. You've been surpassed by the ACC, by the Big Ten, by all of these schools because your teams are cannibalizing each other. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just shows that the SEC is deeper and that it's not just going to automatically get those like 5-6, those 5-6 seeds in the playoffs that they want. For that, they're the number 5 loser this week. At number 5 winners, I want to take a very similar approach here and talk about the group of 5 contenders. I don't want to say I'm a group of 5. I don't want to I don't want to say I'm a group of 5 supporter here, but I am. I'm not trying to be a pariah for it. Andre says, "Go Ducks here." Yeah, they absolutely demolished. We'll get to them in a little bit here later on in our list. But the group of 5 contenders here, they've been really good. We've seen teams like Boise State be ranked in the top 15. UNLV get a chance in the poll. Army and Navy getting chances in the poll now. That's 4 group of 5 teams, all really, really good. There's a chance we get 2 group of 5 teams in the playoffs this year, and that is something that would have been unheard of at the beginning of this season in the history of college football. These group of 5 top contenders continue to dominate, and I think there's a real shot we get 2 in the college football playoffs. My number 4 loser, and again, just got to follow me on this one, Penn State. Penn State is a team that is currently ranked in the top 3 in the nation. I think that's ridiculous. Penn State against a USC team that lost to Michigan, a USC team that has not looked like a top 30 team in the nation, continues to get this respect just because they're undefeated. And I know for a certain extent it matters. It really does. Winning these games matters. We talk about it. Winning is a skill in and of itself. And Penn State did a great job of that. But this was a game they were supposed to dominate. This was a game, when you take a look at it, Penn State was favored by 3.5 points on the road. They go to USC, and they barely escape with a win. Barely. That is not a team that inspires confidence in me. Drew Aller has now started slow in almost every single game this season, and they need more out of this team. They need more consistency if they want that respect of having that number 3 next to their name. They have not showed that to me. Along the same lines of talking about the SEC as a loser, my number 4 winner of this week is the ACC and Big 12, these 2 conferences that were getting kicked to the curb at the beginning of the season. These 2 conferences that felt like they were getting pushed out. The Pac-12 just died. Now the SEC and the Big 10 are trying to be these power conferences, these super conferences. The ACC and the Big 12 now hold 4 of the top 5 seeds in the country. At least in my opinion, they do. These teams have been dominant. The top teams in the country outside of Texas have all come from the ACC, have all come from the Big 12. Ohio State in there as well. But still, these teams are dominant. These teams are showing that the ACC and the Big 12 are not these push-around conferences. They need to get their respect, and I think this is a vital year for these conferences to be good, because I think the sport of college football only gets worse if we continue to push the power of the Big 10 and the SEC together, at least in my opinion. My number 3 loser of the week is Oklahoma. They went up against a juggernaut in Texas that I think is by far clearly the number one team in the nation. Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry put up a stinker. They put up a dud. They were supposed to come out there and be effective, at least, put up a game in a rivalry game. Instead, they get absolutely destroyed. They lose to Tennessee. They lose to, Texas. That is not that's not a great start to your tenure in the SEC. This is a huge, huge statement game for Texas, and Oklahoma just did not rise to the occasion. They're going to fall fast in a lot of polls. They're out of some polls anyway. Mine, they barely made it. But again, we'll talk about that tomorrow when we do our rankings Tuesday. My number 3 winner is Vanderbilt, coming off of a huge win. They were due for a letdown game. They were favored to lose by 2 scores against Kentucky, a good Kentucky team, a Kentucky team that pushed Georgia to the limit, a Kentucky team that beat Ole Miss, a Kentucky team that's physical and strong. And, Vandy went out there and dominated. They played the style of football that you needed them to play. They won this game on their terms, and they're a team that should get more respect. They're a team that you think about ranking now. This is a very good Vandy team. Diego Pavia continues to dominate basically all season long. This is a dangerous Vandy team, and you don't want to go into a game and underestimate them. This is not your father's Vandy. At number 2, losers, we have Colorado, and it's not because of how they played. It's because of who they lost to injury. Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter was the heart, the soul, the mind of that football team. Travis Hunter was the reason, not the only reason, but was probably the biggest reason this team was competitive. And they still took K-State to the wire. They still showed up. Shedeur Sanders showed up with the depleted offense. That defense probably, and I'm giving Travis Hunter a lot of credit here, probably wouldn't have given up at least one of those long touchdowns to Kansas State if he was in the game. Maybe. You don't know how it's going to go, but not playing the whole second half, we saw how K-State opened up the field, the passing game, without Travis Hunter over there. He is a difference maker, and not having him on the field severely limits Colorado's ability to win football games. It's tough when he plays, 45 out of 46 snaps in the first half. That's what he does every game. You extrapolate that out, he plays almost every single snap of every single game. It's hard to expect him to play the full season. But still, that is a tough loss for Colorado, and they're my number 2 losers because of it. My number 2 winners is Oregon. Andre mentioned it earlier. Sko Ducks. Dylan Gabriel, awesome. Dylan Gabriel showed up when they needed him to show up. He made all the clutch throws, all the big throws that they asked of him to make. That was a great performance. Obviously, we want to talk about a team like Ohio State still playing great football, and they didn't make my list. They didn't make my list of biggest losers, not even Will Howard, even though he made a mistake. Oregon comes in, they started off the season slow, almost losing to Idaho, almost losing to Boise State. Now that almost win, almost lost, really looks a lot better, right? Because they're doing that to everybody. Boise State is dominating. But this is an Oregon team that has continued to get better every single week. And this was the first, I want to say, real test for Ohio State. And they stood up to the challenge. But Oregon was better. And I cannot wait for these two teams to meet up in the Big Ten championship game and potentially in the playoff later on. The Oregon Ducks are my number 2 winner. And that takes us to number 1. The number 1 loser of the week is Utah. Utah coming in with all of this hope, and maybe it should have been Ohio State. Again, Will Howard makes that boneheaded decision at the end of the game, just loses track of time, and that sucks. It really does. But Utah looked awful Friday night. Utah against an Arizona State team that deserves to get a little bit more respect. It really does. That's a good Arizona State team, but they had Cam Rising back, and clearly Cam Rising wasn't healthy. Cam Rising is supposed to be the engine that makes this team go, and they could not get anything going. Almost, I don't have the stats in front of me, but as far as I can remember off the top of my head, at least 3 interceptions and a couple of really bad ones. That's not how Utah wants to go. Utah is in trouble. They lost their second Big 12 game, and they are all but out of playoff contention at this point. That is a tough look for them. Utah came in with high expectations, championship expectations, at least Big 12 championship expectations, and they're falling way, way short of that again. They're my number one loser. And that leaves my number one winner, Texas. Texas is the number one winner in a week where coming into it, everyone was expecting, or at least I was expecting, the winner of Oregon, Ohio State to be the number one team in the country, to dethrone Texas. Texas said, nah. Texas said, look at me, you can't take me down. I am the most complete team in the nation. I am the team that everyone looks up to. They put on a show in the Red River rivalry. 34-3, dominant defensively. They put up 34 points against a really good Oklahoma defense. They dominated that game front to back. Quinn Ewers comes in, finally healthy again, shows why he is the starter over Arch Manning, who came in and filled in really nicely, but that's a good example of that. Texas, one of the only teams in the nation, maybe the only team in the nation, that can get injured and still be the number one team. And that is incredible. That is depth you don't see anymore with the state of college football. With the transfer portal, Texas said, no, you're not moving me down. Texas is the number one team in the nation by far. But let me know what you think. Did I miss any winners, any losers? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we are going to talk all about baseball. The ALCS and the NLCS are in full swing. The Mets already down 1-0, but looks like as far as Game 2 goes, maybe they take it. Maybe they even up the series. We'll do predictions and much more with all of the baseball playoffs coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Cheap Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, October 14th. If you are just tuning in, we just did winners and losers for college football and the NFL. In this segment, we turn our attention to baseball. The playoffs in full swing. The championship series have begun. The NLCS already underway. We are midway through Game 2 right now. We will break down predictions, how we got here with both of these teams, and much more. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, October 14th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we are getting into baseball. The ALCS kicks off tonight. The NLCS has already started. The Dodgers, and we will talk about some Game 5s that we weren't able to go over from the DS series, starting with the Dodgers. The Dodgers came in to Game 2 with a 33 straight scoreless inning streak. That ties the record of straight scoreless innings in the history of baseball. That is incredibly impressive. They've done it not just with starting pitching, which has been their weakness. In fact, just 12 of those innings, of those 33 before today's game, came from the starters. The other 19 all came from the bullpen. The bullpen has been dominant, and I would say they're going to continue to do so, but the Mets are up 6-0 right now in the top of the fifth inning right now. So that kind of domination has come to an end. But talking about the Dodgers, they were down 2-1 against the Padres, a Padres team that seemed to have all the momentum, coming off of absolutely smashing the Dodgers 10-1 in a game that they got fired up for. 6-5. They just break the Dodgers' spirit, it seems like. 6 runs in the first 2 innings, and then the Dodgers lock in. They shut down the Padres for the rest of the game. They shut down the Padres for the rest of the series, and at the same time, the offense shows up. We saw an 8-0 game. We saw a 9-0 game against the Mets in Game 1, and we let the beast awaken. And that's the dangerous part. That is the dangerous part of this team. We had unlikely heroes in Game 5 between the Dodgers and the Padres. Kike Hernandez ends up hitting the game-winning home run. 1-0. Teoscar Hernandez adds another home run. Just absolutely dominant over there for the Dodgers, and they continued it, carrying on into Game 1 of the NLCS against the Mets, the hottest team in baseball remaining after, as we'll talk about in the ALCS side of things, the Tigers got eliminated against the Cleveland Guardians. But in Game 2 here, the Mets snapped that 33 straight inning scoreless streak. The Mets score in the first inning of this game, Francisco Lindor, the runner-up to the MVP, homers in the leadoff spot. Then we get a grand slam in the second inning by Mark Vientos, the rookie, having a huge postseason in and of itself. He's had a lot of huge moments, a lot of huge hits. He's hitting 400 in the postseason. Mark Vientos has been awesome. One of the biggest reasons why the Mets are this far into the series, but this is going to be a fun one. People were counting out the Mets. I was one of those people that was thinking maybe the Dodgers are too dangerous of a team now, but do you know how often the Mets have been doubted? All season long, the Mets have been doubted. And all season long, the Mets have come up with answers. They have come up clutch. They've been the opposite of what we normally expect the Mets to do, which is find a way to lose in the most painful way possible. And now they take on the Dodgers, and they are dominating this game. 9-0 on them in Game 1, currently 6-0 on the Dodgers in Game 2. We're looking at most likely, again, it's baseball, anything can happen, most likely a 1-1 series. So when we look to make these predictions, we break down these two rosters. How are they doing this? Well, obviously the Dodgers have that top-heavy lineup. They have Shohei Ohtani, the probable MVP of the NL. They have Mookie Betts, a former MVP. Same with Shohei. They have Freddie Freeman, another former MVP. They have Teoscar Hernandez, the winner of the Home Run Derby this season. They have Will Smith, one of the best catchers in the league. They can hit from top to bottom. Top to bottom, they can hit in this lineup. But their pitching, their starting pitching especially, has been the issue. You have a bullpen that has dominated again, 33 straight innings, 19 straight scoreless innings from the bullpen. That is not something that you do with a bad bullpen. That bullpen is dominant. Top to bottom, it's a great bullpen. The Mets, on the other hand, do it in a more conservative way. They have that closer in Edwin Diaz, and he has done a lot of heavy lifting in this postseason. Multiple 2-inning saves, more than 3-out saves coming in to save the game here. Francisco Lindor come up in huge moments. He obviously hit that grand slam to eliminate the Phillies. You've seen Pete Alonso hit a home run, a 3-run home run to all but walk off the Brewers. Mark Vientos, we talked about him. Jesse Winker has been really solid in a trade coming over from the Nationals earlier this season. Really good energy guy for that team, and they needed that. They needed that badly. Every World Series teams needs an energy guy, and they have two: Jesse Winker, Jose Iglesias, who came in earlier in the season with his pop song OMG, all that stuff. There's just magic going on with the Mets. And so I think I'm taking the Mets to win this series. I think Mets in 6 games over the Dodgers, despite the odds. The Dodgers are the much better team on paper, the way they've been playing heading into this series. But the way that the Mets are going, look, being hot at the right time is a massive thing in baseball, and the Mets are that right now. They're hot right now, and I'm not about to doubt them. The Mets win this in 6 games, move on to the World Series. Heading over to the ALCS, this one has yet to start, so we can do a true even prediction on this one. The Guardians have come all the way back. Much like the Dodgers, they were down 2-1 in their series. They win in Game 4, and then against Tariq Skubal, a guy that had gone 25 straight scoreless innings on his own, a guy that's going to win the Cy Young, maybe the best pitcher in all of baseball. They, in 2 pitches, put up 5 runs. A grand slam from Lane Thomas after Jose Ramirez gets hit by a pitch with the bases loaded to drive in a run. The Tigers just ran out of gas. They're a young, inexperienced team. They're going to be much better next year. We talked about it. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, but I said they were going to be better next year. Now they've arrived. Now they have expectations. Now they know what the playoffs are like. Now they can be ready. That was a just professional game by the Cleveland Guardians. Emmanuel Clase is awesome. We get to see them take on the New York Yankees that just kind of beat the Royals. The matchup wasn't really there. The Royals, again, an offense that was struggling heading into the playoffs. The pitching was good, but the offense was not there, and they could not get it going against the firepower of the New York Yankees. This is going to be a great, great series. The Cleveland Guardians have been one of the better teams in baseball. When you look at their regular season records, they're just separated by 2 games. You know, the Yankees get all of the talk, all of the Aaron Judge, MVP, Juan Soto, all the attention goes to the Yankees. But what this Guardians team has done, again, we talked about Jose Ramirez, we talked about Lane Thomas. How about Steven Kwan? Steven Kwan in the playoffs so far, we already knew what he could do with the bat. He had a crazy streak of just not striking out. He barely misses when he swings the bat. Right now, Steven Kwan in the playoffs is hitting over 500. That is ridiculous. That is not something you're supposed to be able to do. And yet Steven Kwan in the playoffs is doing that. Over 500 in the playoffs is not a normal thing. 524 in the playoffs. And he doesn't have the pop, but he's speedy. He has Gold Glove defense. He saved a couple of games out there in the outfield. If they can get the power bats of Lane Thomas, Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor going, and just the ability to get on base of Steven Kwan, this is going to be a tough series for the Yankees. The Yankees, as far as, making it work, as the Yankees, as far as, being that team that has these bombers. Aaron Judge had a low series, but Giancarlo Stanton was awesome. Giancarlo Stanton was that kind of guy that when you needed him to step up for the Yankees specifically, he was the one that was able to get it done. Aaron Judge, not the greatest series. 154 in this series. But Giancarlo Stanton, 375, he can't really run. He has 12 total bases, a home run, a massive home run to end up winning the game, a bunch of doubles. This is the reason that they moved on. Giancarlo Stanton showed up, and that's why they paid him the big bucks. That's why they traded for him from Miami, so he could show up in the playoffs when they needed him, behind Soto, behind Judge. if he can continue to hit like this, the Yankees are going to win this series. That's what it comes down to. The X factor for you is Giancarlo Stanton. And I think I'm leaning towards Stanton and the Yankees taking this one in 7. This should be a fun series if it stays close. If it stays close, the Guardians have the edge because of their bullpen. But I just think the way that the Yankees are hitting right now is going to be too much. I think Aaron Judge can't be held down this long. I think Juan Soto can't be held down this long. And I think it's going to be too much for that Guardians team to deal with. We saw them struggle with some of the Tigers hitters. And flat out, the Yankees hitters are better. But let me know what you think. Who's going to the World Series? I have the Mets and the Yankees. A Subway Series in the World Series. That would be a lot of fun. But like I said, let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk all about Monday Night Football, a massive matchup in the AL East for division supremacy. So make sure you stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, October 14th. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the predictions for the championship series in baseball. I have a Subway Series in the World Series. It should be a lot of fun. Baseball playoffs have been amazing. Make sure you tune in if you feel like it. It's been awesome to watch. I highly recommend it. In this segment, we turn our attention to the NFL, a Monday Night Football clash between the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills, a must-win game for both of these teams. These two teams are limping into it. The Bills have lost 2 straight, and the last one was pretty ugly. The Jets just fired their head coach. We'll break down that matchup and more in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, October 14th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Monday Night Football game. A massive game, like I said, for division supremacy. This is a game that will determine who is on the top of the AFC East. This is, again, not something you expected. Both of these teams have come into this game limping. The Bills started off 3-0. They looked dominant. Then the heart and soul of their defense gets suspended, injuries, shorthandedness. Without Khalil Shakir, we don't know the status of James Cook tonight. That's going to be a big one for this Bills offense. Josh Allen coming off maybe one of his worst games in his career as far as completion percentage goes. He's done a good job this season. And this is the most important thing of not turning the ball over. That's always been the biggest criticism against Josh Allen. And against a Jets defense that is really good, he needs to continue to do that. They have a chance to win any game as long as he doesn't throw interceptions, and he's thrown 0 so far. That is a massive part of why this Bills team has looked good, has looked competitive, but these last 2 weeks have not been it. There has been a weakness found of this Bills team, and that is running the ball on them. The Ravens obviously gashed them with Derrick Henry, but there's only one Derrick Henry. There's only one team with the combo of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and that's the Ravens. So they're not going to have to deal with that potentially ever or until January. Again. But these other teams, it's a copycat league. They found the difference. The Texans were very effective in the run against them. CJ Stroud didn't have his greatest game, but they were able to find holes in that defense. The defense that was so staunch in the first couple weeks of the season has not looked great. And now they have to compete with a Jets team and Aaron Rodgers that are looking for answers and are looking for answers in the worst possible way. They fired head coach Robert Saleh. A move that was head-scratching. Honestly, it was. They came back from London, and they're playing on Monday, which I think is odd. Generally, coming back from London, or coming back from overseas, you have a bye week, but not for the Jets. That might be a little bit of a factor in the Bills' favor, but also there always is a boost when an interim coach first starts. Happens everywhere. I can't remember the last time an interim coach lost their first game. That being said, this Jets team just doesn't seem to have it. I don't know what it is. It was an odd time to fire it. Generally, when you fire a coach, you feel like, yeah, they deserve to get fired. But this one didn't make a lot of sense, so I'm not sure if that same boost is going to apply here, but trends are trends, so that's something you do need to consider when we're talking about this game. The Bills come in, and again, this is a must-win for both of these teams. It's not just a must-win for the Jets, it's a must-win for the Bills as well, looking to avoid losing 3 straight games. Currently, they sit at, a not as great as expected 3-2 heading into the season. Again, this is for the supremacy of the division. The Jets, both of these teams have been, not where they want to be. But the Bills have yet to win against a good team. They've beaten the Cardinals. They've beaten the Dolphins without Tua for most of that game. They've beaten the Jaguars. Then they lost to the Ravens and the Texans, and now the Jets, who are a borderline good team. They need to decide if they're a good team or not, are facing these Bills. Both of these teams are in the same category of, I don't know if they're really, really good or just gonna surprise you on any given week. Right? This is a game that, again, it's a must-win for both of them. And I'm leaning towards the Jets on this one. And again, maybe you can call me silly, but the reason I'm leaning towards the Jets is because of that aforementioned interim coach thing. There always is a boost in morale. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but the locker room, from all reports, really like the defensive coordinator that is now the interim head coach. Nathaniel Hackett has been demoted, no longer calling plays. That can really only be a helpful thing. I think Aaron Rodgers generally calls his own plays anyway. Not really, but he makes all these checks at the line. He's basically an extra offensive coordinator on the field, so that really doesn't matter that much. And Hackett was just a Rodgers pawn. But you take a look at this game. Bills favored by 2 points in this one. I'm leaning towards the Jets because they have that head coach, that fired coach boost, and the Bills are sliding. They have not looked good in back-to-back weeks. Josh Allen against this Jets defense needs to show me something. He'll be fine. But I'm worried about not having James Cook. And even if he is there, I'm worried about not having a fully healthy James Cook. They've just brought up Frank Gore Jr., which is not a good sign for James Cook. Again, nothing has come out yet, but we keep an eye on that. If James Cook plays, I think that's a huge boost for the Bills. This has been a defense in the Jets defense that you've been able to run on. We saw that especially in week 1. They were able to get run on a little bit. The Vikings were able to run on them a little bit, just a little bit. The Broncos, that was an ugly, ugly game. But still, these games that they've lost, they've been run on. That's been the thing. And I think that's going to be a massive part for the Jets. For the Bills, for the Jets defense, is James Cook going to be there? And from what I'm seeing, reports are leaning towards yes, but from what the moves that they've made, I think it's going to be in a limited capacity, if at all. So I'm leaning towards the Jets in this one. I think the Jets win this game 23-20 in a kind of ugly football game. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. We're going to take a quick final break here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the WNBA. So make sure you stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, October 14th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over Monday Night Football, a preview of the Bills versus Jets, a game for the top of the AFC East. In this segment, we turn our attention to the WNBA Finals. 2 games in, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happened on the court, why it doesn't make sense when these games are happening, and much more. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. Excuse me. If you do, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, October 14th. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show today here with a little bit of WNBA. The New York Liberty taking on the Minnesota Lynx. And before we get into the actual games, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is because it does not make sense to me why they're playing these games at the times that they are. Game 1, an awesome game, one of the best basketball games that I've seen or watched in a very, very long time, took place on Thursday night, competing with the NFL. The NBA itself knows not to compete with the NFL. It's dumb why the WNBA is the one that's deciding to compete with the NFL. Game 2 on Sunday, competing with the NFL yet again. Now, Game 3 is on Wednesday. Smart decisions. Game 4 on Friday. And if they need a Game 5, a decisive Game 5 for your championship, they're playing on Sunday. And that I don't understand. Again, this WNBA Finals has been awesome. Game 1, a record comeback by the Minnesota Lynx. 18 points down. They were able to come all the way back, force overtime, almost win in win in overtime. Come back from 18 points and win in overtime is insane to do. And yet nobody saw it because they're competing with the NFL. Because this is a league that's growing, is competing with the king of sports in the United States, your key market. I don't understand why they're doing this. I don't understand why they would put Game 5 on Sunday either. push it to Tuesday. Give these guys a little bit, give these athletes a little bit more rest, and don't compete with the NFL. But getting to the actual product on the court, yesterday we saw a game where the Lynx were trying to make yet another comeback. The Liberty shut them down. They shut them out in the fourth quarter, not letting them mount that comeback. They jumped out to a huge lead in the first quarter, 31-21 there, a 10-point lead, and they just never looked back. The Lynx are a team that I think is solid, 30-10 on the year. They earned one of the top 4 seeds in the league, but the Liberty only lost 8 games this season. They have a all-star roster, top to bottom. I just think it's a war of attrition right now for the Lynx. It's a matter of how long they can hold out here. I don't see it holding out much longer. I said when we were talking about the WNBA earlier, it's a battle between the Liberty and the Aces, who faced each other in the semifinals. The winner of that series is going to win the whole thing because those two were the best teams. The Aces coming off of 2 straight championships. They're going for their three-peat. The Liberty, who just have been dominant all season long. Everything has clicked for them this season, and it's not really stopping now. I think the Liberty, I don't want to say they win the next 2 games, but I don't know if this goes 5. I'm not certain this goes 5. I think the Lynx are a little outmatched, and I think the Liberty got the jitters out in game 1. And I think they're going to dominate the rest of the way. I think the Liberty take this in 4 now, win the next 2 games, but keep an eye on this because this series has been awesome to watch. But let me know what you think. Who do you have winning this series? Who do you have winning the WNBA championship? I'd love to hear from all of you. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Tomorrow is Tuesday, Rankings Tuesday. We come out with our NFL Power Rankings. We come out with our NCAA Top 25, our Group of 5 Top 5, and much more. So make sure you tune in for that. I will see you same time, same place tomorrow. You all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. It's gonna be a bad day. Them tired of shit, the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.